You cannot have a nation, you cannot have an economy without manufacturing. Manufacturing and trade drive the second phase of rapid economic development. So what will be the goal in this area? In the 60s and 70s, the economists here will tell you, the adage was import substitution industrialization. I am proposing the same thing. It is the same policy that the Chinese and the Koreans and all these people use. We are heavily dependent on other nations' produce in areas that we have the natural endowment and the capability to produce them here. Let's substitute imports for locally produced items. Now, I want to modify that a little bit by saying that our import substitution industrialization must be linked to strict export discipline. We satisfy domestic demand if we are into cash crops like we are with cocoa. If we get into other areas that I think we should, or oil palm. If we get into other areas that we are still import dependent, like cereals, maize, we must dedicate a certain quota of our produce for exports and the foreign exchange that we need that to circulate back into the country in the form of machinery and new technologies to make us efficient in what we're doing. So that's the goal, import substitution industrialization. What is the means? How do we do this? I am proposing the setting up of infant industries. Many governments keep talking that the private sector is the engine of growth. My brothers and sisters, let's get serious. Where is the backbone of the private sector in this country? How many are they? In what industries are they? And what is their absorptive employment capacity? In my opinion, we thank those who are in the private sector, but we have a long way to go. I am proposing the setting up of various factories, manufacturing entities to support this agricultural development program I'm talking about, that will be the next stage of processing these items. Because in a lot of cases, you realize that the final value, the intrinsic value of most of these agricultural items are when they are processed. Orange into orange juice, tomato into canned tomato, pineapple into pineapple juice. It's preserved, it's portable, it has a high value. And therefore, that also should be subsumed into the regional development approach I'm talking about. It will be a wonderful thing to set up, say, 2 factories in every region of Ghana. That will be 20 factories as a start to support this serious activity of agricultural production. And the seriousness of that is that we are not going to allow one item that is produced to go to waste, that they will be processed and they will bring revenue to the country. So we will need government protection. And this is the where we must interrogate it. We have been told that this is a liberal economy. I am very sorry that at this stage in our development, to adopt a liberal economic approach is suicidal. We will not have a chance. We need our government to protect our infant industries. They need subsidies in the form of cheap loans, tax breaks, and research and technology transfer assistance. What will be the guiding points of this approach? I know because of a series of corruption, not just in this government, but corruption in the public sector. Anytime you propose something that has government influence, government activity, government to be the catalyst, people begin to be uncomfortable. But I'm here to tell you that if you look at what has happened in all these countries who were down there with us, the Koreans and the Taiwans, and now the Vietnams, and at some point even Brazil and all that, they use specific tribal tested policy that even the so-called rich countries today, the Americas and the UKs and the Germanys and the Japans, adopted the same formula. Alexander Hamilton, the first treasurer of the United States, went to the United States Congress and made a passionate appeal to turn them around why they should not allow Britain and the other then developed European countries to ship their products there, and that they should create barriers around their nation to give their companies, their starting companies, a chance to get to a point before they start competing. So we will need government support to manufacturers who export successfully. There's going to be discipline, and if you are being held, you will be given certain things to accomplish, export quota, certain targets to continue to get the help.
What I'm saying is that for Ghanaians ourselves, sometimes we say you cannot eat macroeconomics. We eat macroeconomics every day, stable macroeconomics environment. Let me give an example of myself. When I came as a young man into Ghana in the early 70s, and when I was the Minister of Finance, inflation was 3%. I bought insurance policy, 10-15-year policy, to earn me $100,000 equivalent. The city was then 1.12. After 15 years and investing almost about 13 cedis a month, my policy matured. In the 80s, the city was then 500 cedis to the dollar. I got 2,000 cedis, effectively, for my 100,000. At the same time that I was doing this, I bought a house in Tema, 14,000. That house, by the time I was being paid the 2,000, was worth $70,000. Okay? We eat macroeconomics every day. Let's fast forward. 2008. Investors who had invested in Ghana, who were retaining their earnings in Ghana. Let's get a company. 35 million cedis in retained earnings, equivalent to $35 million, because the cedi was 1-to-1 to the dollar. 1 cedi, $1. For having confidence in the Ghanaian economy and not transferring the profits out and putting pressure on the cedi. Now, 2013, 2 cedis to the dollar. The company has lost $17 million through the air, through poor macroeconomic management. That's what we are talking about. So, my submission here is this. You need relative stable macroeconomic management. Your city has to be relatively stable. If it's depreciating by 10%, your domestic inflation should be about, if your domestic inflation is about 12%, let your city depreciate by 15% so that your economy is competitive. I saw some statistics from Lloyd Amoah of Ashesi. Our cost in Ghana. A delivery truck in America, speed 58 miles per hour. A delivery truck in Ghana, speed 18 miles per hour. High cost of delivery. Our ports to get things out. Our ports are the only places that are being used to collect revenue. They are not for facilitating trade. Ghana is a small country. We need to look at what the rest of the world is doing. Speak the language that will make the investors bring in their money and develop our economy. Because Dr. Amoah has insisted on giving a vision of where we are going, let me give my vision. My vision is Ghana at the center of ECOWAS, of 350 million people, $400 billion of purchasing power, where people will sit here and manufacture for both the West Coast and the world, the rest of the world. A maritime hub, an aviation hub, a gas and oil engineering services hub, which means we have to clean up our act at the ports and make the dry dock become the top end of servicing these seismic and offshore supply vessels, boats that are coming, which can pay with 30, which will lose about 10 million if they have to go from here to Gibraltar for servicing. So we position Ghana here as the center. And for our government and manufacturing, let's base it on our raw material, bauxite, reduced to alumina to become ingots. And then the ingots, let the Chinese take it away for 3 years for whatever they want to do. But after that, let's tell them, you are going to be the world's largest manufacturer of motor vehicles. Make your block engines here using Ghana's ingots. Make the wheels of the cars here using aluminium. And some of the aviation making company, let them come and establish here. So you are making Ghana the center of global manufacturing based on aluminium. Agriculture, yes, there's climate change. Boreholes, I have a borehole in Ebri. The yield is dwindling. Irrigation, yes, we can do irrigation. The right material, I'll talk about tomatoes being rotten. I went there with Israelis. The yield, the material you use is wrong. And therefore the yields are bad. We import probably $700 million of tomato paste from Europe. We can grow it here. But to me, when I see the list of imported things, it's an opportunity for our industry, for our entrepreneurs to produce. Somebody will say, we don't produce even toothpick in Ghana. Wrong. The former chief executive of the Ghana Cocoa Board, Kwame Sapon, is producing toothpick using bamboo in Kumasi right now. The entrepreneurial capacity, neoliberal economy says, free the people, free the markets. But we should say that in the 21st century, your people are your key element.
That when you are a small economy such as ours, you are better off having an open economy. In other words, being able to export. And there's a paradox there when you try to promote ISI and at the same time talk about exports. Because on the one hand, you are saying, let me close my economy. But you also want to go into somebody else's economy through exports. Now, what if they also say, okay, we are closing our economy? Togo closes their economy, Burkina closes their economy, Ivory Coast, Nigeria, we all end up in autarky. So there needs to be some sort of a balance. And you always need to do this looking at your own situation, stages of growth, and more importantly, the strength of institutions. A lot of the strategies, and you can use just about any strategy, it could be neoliberal, it could be central planning, whatever, all roads ultimately lead to institutions. When you have weak institutions, the best policies always come out with bad results. If you have very good institutions, even suboptimal policies tend to yield good results. Now the question then is, what do we mean by institutions, at least within the context of economic development, where institutions do not mean the same, they don't have the same conversational meaning as we do. So I will elaborate on the key elements of institutions as they apply to development economics, which is different from organization. An organization is simply a group of people with a name. So Citi Fm, for instance, is an organization. The institutions are the processes that govern that. But within the context of development, when we talk about institutions, we are looking at the laws that govern the way we do business, either in the public sector or the private sector. The policies, the regulations, the norms, the customs, the way we behave. Mr. Pianim earlier mentioned painters standing on tables. That's a very familiar experience where they come, you go into my house, you see all sorts of stains and whatnot, and they refuse to even put paper on the ground so that the drips would be there. So no, when they finish, they'll wipe it. Why go through that? These are customs and patterns that we've adopted. Within development economics, we have something called social capital, which drives the processes. Social capital. At the heart of social capital is trust. Now, these are the soft aspects of development. This is not about infrastructure. This is not about bridges and whatnot. These are fuzzy things. What is trust? Anybody can pretty much come up with it. But it is at the heart of economic transactions within this new approach. We mentioned that we import a lot of tomatoes. But a couple of years ago, I met a woman in the central region, a Ghanaian, who imports tomatoes from Burkina Faso, and she didn't have a twinge of guilt about that. Why? Because before then, she had been pre-financing tomato farmers in the central region. But then they always fell short. They either took the money and didn't plant the tomato at all, or they planted the tomato but at the wrong quantities. I mean, she had major problems. So she simply went to Burkina. And that's where she imports her tomatoes from. So strategy or no strategy, you need to look at your institutions. There are people, your South African businessmen, who tell you, listen, I would love to have these products in Ghana. I don't have to go to South Africa and bring them in. But when I tell your people I want 6 boxes, tomorrow they'll give me 2 boxes 2 days after I've requested it. Institutions, values, customs, norms, these are all critical to economic development. But usually, by the very nature of our training, we tend to focus on the quantitative aspect of it, the hard aspects of development, and not the soft issues. In the case of neoliberalism, again, as Mr. Pianim said in response to my colleague, Dr. Amoah, it's not a question of either or. There are aspects of it that you definitely can adopt. But you need to know which aspects you need to adopt. At what point do you back off? For example, we came in under neoliberalism, and especially during the period of stabilization and structural adjustment, 1980s, 1990s. We did a lot of privatization. But the institutional framework wasn't there, and it's still not there. For instance, competition law. We still don't have competition law. So we divest into companies that carry out predatory policies that actually undermine us. A lot of the time, these companies are actually foreign owned.